Unusual color pairings, when done right, can lead to wonderful results. The clean, easy-to-read font and the gold of the statuette stand out beautifully against the terracotta orange. As one of the earliest ceremony posters, this is a confident debut. Take it from me. Having a thin, classy serif font with tight leading and kerning, referring to the vertical and horizontal spacing between text, respectively, is an easy shortcut to convey the sophisticated nature of any event or show. It may come across as cluttered, but I think it does a fairly good job of guiding your eye to all the elements. After two strong previous entries, this one feels slightly disappointing. I do like the unique color pairing of purple and orange, though more vibrant shades could have delivered a better impact. This poster continues the trend of uncommon color pairings. Set against a simple navy blue background, the red text stands out like neon lettering. The negative image render of the statuette is an interesting touch, though not particularly compelling. Honestly, I quite love it. This is hands down my favorite illustration of the statuette. It has a cartoony, almost Hanna-Barbera-esque quality to it, which makes me wonder what would an animated series featuring the Oscar look like. I'd actually pay good money for something in the style of Smart Appliances, Stupid Owners, an episode from Love, Death, and Robots, where several Oscars from famous celebrities recount funny anecdotes. Oh yeah, this one delivers a much-needed dopamine rush. The clean, ultra-thin font and perfectly center-aligned composition just put a big smile on my face. Oh, and that statuette's head overlapping the O in show, Chef's Kiss. Featuring a very sparkling statuette set against a stark red background, this poster captures a famous element of the evening, that is, the iconic red carpet and the star-studded gathering. Fun fact, the 43rd Academy Awards marked the first time an actor refused their Oscar, George C. Scott for General, George S. Patton in Patton. Almost all of the 70s Academy Awards posters are set against a single color background, usually black. This is common practice, especially when trying to draw attention to the foreground, in this case the multi-layered, colorful typography. Technically, it's a sound poster. It gets the job done. Aesthetically, though, it's rather uneventful. There isn't much here to convey an evening of glitter. It honestly looks more like the poster for a Saturday Night Live sketch show. I like this poster for two very particular reasons. As a designer myself, I often use a triangle shape in my compositions to guide the viewer's eye. It creates a nice cascading hierarchy, which I think gives a subtle Christmas tree feel to the design. This poster pulls it off effortlessly. Much like the previous one, this also features colorful typography, this time a wonderful geometric font, partially striped. The visual effect is reminiscent of scan lines, or more accurately, slot masks. Vintage TVs had them, so this feels clever, even if that wasn't quite the intent. This one is a 70s manifest. The assortment of stars, the rainbow neon colors, the jukebox shape. I love this poster because it is so unashamedly of its era, tapping into the disco-heavy side of the decade, and seems to herald the emerging trend of now iconic musicals like Grease, Saturday Night Fever, All That Jazz, and the cult classic The Rocky Horror Picture Show. It truly captures the pulse of the 70s. I feel like this was the only obvious direction they could have gone after the previous year's poster. Calling it chaotic would be an understatement. Very experimental, very modernist. It works for me because it manages to be timeless. It captures the excitement and buzz of the event brilliantly. A part of me wishes they'd followed up with another erratic design, but I quite like this one. The composition is a designer's dream. The orange/gold neon aesthetic and clean typography give it a vibe of professional integrity. Monotone, boring. This is easily my least favorite, though by no means a terrible poster. It's about as exciting as a broken grandfather clock. On one hand, it's no surprise that an event honoring cinema would prominently showcase an iconic element like the film reel on the poster, but on the other hand, I'm compelled to paraphrase Miranda Priestley. Film reel, for Oscars, groundbreaking. Purely from a typography perspective, this poster is my favorite. That custom cursive lettering of Oscar is aesthetically pleasing and complements the glamorous nature of the event. There are other things that please me too. The cool cyan that pops against the black background, the inverted triangle shape of the layout, and the star-like flashes. Altogether, this poster immediately transports me to my favorite decade in Hollywood filmmaking. As a graphic designer, I know a phone-in submission when I see one. Though it's by no means a bad design, there's nothing here that stands out. It simply gets the job done. We start off the 80s with a rather nondescript poster. The only thing of note here is the use of the ITC Benguiat typeface, the quintessential font of the decade used on practically every Stephen King novel of the era. Well, an attempt was made. The brown is back, again with an inexplicable starburst of the word Academy. I get what they were going for, drawing the eye toward the portal behind the statuette, but because all the visual elements blend into one another, the execution falls flat. It just ends up looking bland. This is the first of 3 posters from the decade that actually feel like they belong to the 80s. What I love about it is how it doesn't even try to be a traditional poster. It looks more like a screen grab from a late-night television bumper, complete with VHS static and analog charm. And you know what? That actually works in its favor. The second of the 3 gloriously 80s entries. I'm really into the bold, dramatic pose of the statuette. It looks like it's descending from the cosmos. That sense of theatricality adds to its perceived value, like it's not just an award, but a divine object beaming down from orbit. The third in this unofficial trilogy really seals the deal. The hyper-detailed rendering of the statuette and the dimensional gleaming text, all resting on a reflective surface. Everything here just clicks. Then we get a sharp downgrade. This one's visually similar to the 48th Annual Awards poster, but somehow manages to be even more forgettable. It lacks the warm orange hues that gave the earlier one some life. Here, it's just a flatter, colder rehash. Now this one is stunning. The angular typeface, the heavy drop shadows, very reminiscent of Art Deco flair. I can easily picture it on the cover of a vintage superhero comic, something like The Rocketeer or early Superman. It strikes a perfect balance between retro and heroic, and lands easily among the most aesthetically refined posters of the decade. Once again, we're back to a classy and sophisticated approach. What really elevates this one is the subtle wall of text in the background, a list of every Best Actor and Actress winner up to that point. It's a quiet, respectful nod to history, and it grounds the poster in legacy, without shouting for attention. At once gaudy and garish, and somehow both over-designed and underwhelming. I hate to be harsh, but there's really nothing redeemable here. It's loud for the sake of being loud. And finally, one that's oddly charming. There's a kind of kitschy surrealism to it. I don't know if the artist had just watched Labyrinth or was a practicing medium in his spare time, but the end result definitely leaves an impression. Why it took this long to get Saul Bass to design a ceremony poster is beyond me, but here we are, the first of his 5 official posters, and to me the first proper attempt at a serious, design-driven visual. It carries that unmistakable Bass DNA, bold, minimalist, and timeless. To further illustrate his lasting influence, just look at the geometric A in the composition. Now compare that to the current Oscars logo. That's legacy. Can you say The Sixth Sense? With its eerie atmosphere and alien-esque typography, it evokes the feeling of a classic horror film. Fitting, considering this was the year Silence of the Lambs swept every major award. Mr. Bass returns, this time with a more cinematic flair. This poster leans into the elusive, tantalizing glamour of the Oscar itself. There's a kind of seductive mystery here, heightened by the Olympic-style typography that subtly nods to the event's inherent competitiveness. The third in Bass's run, and let's just say, the Matryoshka doll direction is a choice. I'm not entirely sure what the conceptual thread is here, but visually, it maintains that cinematic quality he's known for. It's playful, but I'll admit, it left me scratching my head. Brutal honesty time. This is my least favorite of the Bass posters. It's undeniably beautiful, visually polished, clean, even stylish, but it's missing that signature punch. Unlike his other entries, which leaned into bold minimalism or layered narrative, this one feels caught in the middle, neither dramatic nor restrained, just fine. We arrive at the final Bass poster, and I'll be honest, I'm a bit torn. On one hand, I really enjoy the Matrix-style typography and the trippy, surreal distortion effect. On the other hand, it's essentially the previous year's image, copy-pasted and repeated. Middle-of-the-road poster. Now this is a brilliant example of typographic illustration. The silhouette of the statuette built entirely out of every Best Picture winner to date. Chef's kiss. I'm absolutely in love with the clever, understated execution. My only gripe is the OSCAR overlay slapped on top. By this point, the statuette had become iconic enough on its own. No need to spell it out. Words can't express how hopelessly in love I am with this poster. If I were to do a proper ranking, this would easily land in my top 3. Inspired by cinema marquee structures, the design walks a perfect tightrope, elegant but not cliché, neat but not sterile. It's confident, beautiful, and quietly nostalgic. I'm not sure what emotion an X-ray bell is supposed to evoke. This one feels more like the cover art for a Cold War documentary than a celebration of cinema. That said, I'll give it points for cleanliness. At least the layout is focused and tidy. This poster doesn't take itself too seriously, and I respect that. With a number like 2000, there's only so much you can do. I like what they went with here. The use of cool blue and striking gold is a killer color combo. There's a sophistication in the contrast that immediately draws the eye. Substituting the 1 in 2001 with the statuette is a bold, iconic move. Honestly, that alone should have been the whole poster. The cascading row of figures feels like unnecessary clutter in what could have been a masterclass in simplicity. This one's special. Designed by Alex Ross, the famed comic book illustrator, this diesel punk-inspired poster reimagines the statuette as a kind of golden age superhero. It's bold, mythic, and powerful. Easily one of my favorite depictions of the Oscar, both reverent and fantastical in the best possible way. Visually appealing? Yes, but not distinctive enough to warrant any special praise. It plays it safe, offering polish without punch. Vibrant and highly stylized, this one infuses a pop art sensibility with a touch of vintage Art Deco. It's loud, playful, and confident. Just 2 years earlier, Alex Ross gave us a moody, serious, comic-style take. This, in contrast, represents the funnier, brighter, more exaggerated side of the comic book aesthetic. This poster is what happens when you play around with Photoshop's cardboard filter for a bit too long. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Slenderman or SCP-173 were inspired by this design. Designed by Joan Maloney, this year actually received 2 posters, and both are elegant and mature. What sets them apart is the photographic approach, close-up portraits of 2 Hollywood legends, Julie Andrews and Cary Grant, where only the statuette and the text are color highlighted. Everything else is left in black and white. Even the poster titles are clever, white gloves and black tuxedo. It's a classy nod to the dream scenario we all imagine. Everyone's an Oscar winner. This poster echoes the 1987 design, but with a modern twist. Instead of a wall of past winners' names, this one features some of cinema's most iconic quotes, arranged in a word bubble style that feels both spontaneous and intentional. The layout is clean, the type hierarchy works well, and overall, it's a great example of making typography emotionally resonant. Designed by Drew Struzan, yes, the same artist behind the legendary Back to the Future poster, this year's design is at once hypnotic and nostalgic. His signature hand-drawn style lends the piece a warm, romantic quality. The statuette, bathed in blinding white light, feels almost mythological. It's a poster that captures the dreamy, idealized version of Hollywood we all carry in our heads. If the previous poster was a dream, this one's a vivid nightmare. For the first time, the venue, the Dolby Theater, makes a visual appearance. The concept isn't inherently flawed, but the execution is jarring. The deep blacks and searing reds clash rather than complement. Instead of glamour, it gives off the energy of a suspense thriller poster. This marks the first time actual actors are featured on a ceremony poster. And honestly, what better way to kick off that trend than with Alec Baldwin and Steve Martin? Their comedic chemistry shines through, but what really elevates the design is the soft-lit render of the statuette. There's something about the humanoid statuette that seems to compel most designers to bathe it in dramatic lighting or shroud it in darkness. At this point, we've seen that trick a dozen times. That said, I do prefer the typography here. It's elegant, regal, and does a better job of communicating prestige than the visual ever could. We're back again with the blue-gold combo. I quite like it. This one has a cozy, nostalgic vibe, similar to the 1987, 1996, and 2006 posters, all of which paid homage to cinema in clever ways. This time, it's done through screen grabs from classic Hollywood films. A warm idea, beautifully executed. Though I do wish they'd chosen a different film in place of Driving Miss Daisy. That's a smiling Seth MacFarlane holding a stylized illustration of the statuette, and that's it. There's not much more to say here. That's a smiling Ellen DeGeneres sitting next to the statuette. The year is 2013, 6 years before Dakota Johnson softly triggered the beginning of Ellen's downfall. What is worth noting here is the Oscar logo. This marks the first official appearance of what is now widely accepted as the definitive Oscars emblem. Now this year is unique. Instead of a single official poster, the Academy commissioned 15 different designs, each crafted by a different artist. It's a rare and inspired move that opened up space for visual variety. Minimal and lovely. The golden brush stroke statuette silhouette effect. Say that 3 times fast. paired with the cursive, dreamy typography creates a whimsical and graceful tone. Serviceable. That's the best way to describe this one. It wouldn't look out of place in the 70s. That's not necessarily a compliment, but not a dig either. It's fine. It exists. Weirdly enough, I find this poster oddly charming. Jimmy Kimmel's a highly recognizable face, and honestly, I think that helps more than it hurts. I really like the scribbles and handwritten elements. It makes the poster feel approachable, even a little personal. You now have the Gummy Bears theme song stuck in your head. This is hands down the most art house direction I've ever seen an Oscar poster take. It looks like the key art to a Gary Hustwit-style documentary on modern design, and I mean that in the best possible way. The Academy kicked off the 20s with yet another beautiful collection of colorful posters, each designed by a different artist. It's a welcome continuation of the 2015 approach, giving multiple creatives the space to interpret the Oscars through their own lens. On one hand, it's vibrant. On the other, the color palette feels mismatched, and nothing really pops the way you'd hope. Again, not much to write home about. The design feels like an imagined collaboration between Saul Bass and MC Escher, geometric, repetitive, a little dizzying. Still, the final effect has a kind of kinetic energy to it, which gives it some merit. Now this is a vibe. The angle of the statuette, standing in the center of what looks like an infinity pool at dusk, pure vaporwave. The moody purples and pinks are right up my alley, easily one of my favorites from the modern era. The kaleidoscope effect is decent, pleasant to look at, sure, but nothing especially groundbreaking. It's pretty, but ultimately forgettable.